The ring bearer is setting out on the quest of Mount Doom. On him alone is any charge laid, neither to cast away the ring, nor to deliver it to any servant of the enemy, nor indeed to let any handle it, save members of the company and the council, and only then in gravest need.
Welcome to the Wayward Wizards podcast. Today we are reading Book 2, Chapter 3 of the Fellowship of the Ring. The Ring Goes South. I am Zach.
I'm Logan. I'm pumped. I'm ready.
Let's go. Let's go.
Let's get on the road, dog.
Like, no more pussyfooting around.
No.
Let's get this thing started.
Yeah.
Let's get this. I mean, so much great stuff happens in this
there's
chapter.
Action. There's evil birds. There's trudging. A lot of trudging in this chapter. I love
also,
it.
You texted me this morning that Boromir is kind of the hero of the chapter.
Boromir's the Giga Chad of this chapter. Let me tell you what.
He is really leaning into his essence.
Should we bring some wood, guys? What do you think? And they're like, oh, I don't know if we're going to be able to light a fire. And he's like, we're going to want a fire.
There's one point where he's like, when minds can't handle, muscle must prevail, or like,
yeah, that's so good.
That's Boromir in a nutshell.
He's like, yo, I went to Home Depot before this trip, and I got what we need. You know, I got tubs, I got bungee cords, I got duct tape. I got what we need. It's on the back of my F-150. Get in. Wah. I love it.
This morning you said that Boromir is the F-150 of the company, and I think that's so true.
That's right.
That's so true. And then
lifted.
Lifted F-150 with the LED bar in the front.
And he's got glass packs on that thing. That's what the Horn of Gondor is. It's a glass pack.
Well, I was thinking he's like the F-150 with truck nuts on it. Like he's fully bringing that masculine energy to the company. Absolutely. Legolas is bringing the feminine energy, and Boromir is bringing that masculine energy.
Big time.
Yeah, I mean, we cover a lot of ground in this chapter. I mean, it's interesting to think that for a few chapters there, it was like the timeline was like stretched.
Yeah, totally.
And it was like a really close look at about 5 days worth of action. And in this one, you know, they just kind of randomly will be like, 12 days passed, or they went 100 leagues.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, so things are moving along a lot faster.
Yeah, it seems like every time there's like a paragraph break, like I don't know what you call that, like a little space between two paragraphs.
Yeah.
A couple days kind of go by, which is sort of cool.
Yeah.
So you just get these like, images of places where they stop or things that are noted. It really picks up. It's fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's when you're reading it really closely, like we are, the changes in tone and pacing are really evident, especially if we're reading the chapters multiple times, in quick succession. Like we just read this together, a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Which is like much quicker succession of reads than what I would normally do in my life.
Yeah.
So I'm picking up on these like changes in pace.
It's it's funny, like at the end of the chapter, as I finished up reading, I found myself, I was surprised because I really miss actually some of the
slower
poetry.
Pace. Yeah.
And
we get much less of it from here on
slower
out.
Pace, and like this like the like nice conversations between Merry and Pippin and Sam and Frodo, and that surprised me because oftentimes I feel like I sort of have to slog through that first book you know.
Right. Right.
But I kind of missed it, you know. Um,
I mean, it makes for less interesting literature, but it would make for a much better life. Like
yeah,
if we were living this story, um, we would desperately want it to be at the pace of like Shire life.
yeah,
Um, the pace of like the mountain that's trying to kill you, and then the mines that are trying to kill you, and then the Urkai that are trying to kill you, and then the forest that's trying to kill you. Like that would ruin our lives.
yeah,
Um,
right.
but that's the conflict is what makes a good story.
Yeah,
And
it's not a great story if they just stay in the Shire.
then they made tea, and then they had another breakfast.
Yeah, there's a whole book about Fatty Bulger.
Yeah, yeah. Just nobody wants to read it.
But he's just like making eggs, you know, eating
Yeah.
bacon, uh, going to the prancing pony. Like,
Wash, rinse, repeat.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, but nobody would want to read that story. There's some like metatextual insights about storytelling that make its way into this chapter that I want to be sure and mention
yeah,
when Bilbo is talking about the writing of the story. But maybe that's a good reminder to us, like whenever we're going through a hardship, we just desperately want to go back to that quieter time. But um, when we are going through hardship, that those are the things that become the stories that are worth telling later, even though it's miserable when you're going through it.
I agree.
um I think Tolkien understood that, like what it was that made things worth telling, um stories worth telling, even though I think he more than other modern writers takes time to kind of like luxuriate in those serene settings, um because it makes us miss them and feel like the Shire is a real place that we want to protect, and it makes the stakes of the story all the more profound because we want that place to remain the way that it is as well.
Yeah, you know, I realized that the other day, and maybe this comes partly from closely reading this text, this Lord of the Rings, is that all you have to do to get through a hardship is suffer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, that's sort of like a middle-aged realization. Like I've
Yeah.
been through some suffering now, and
Yeah.
especially lately, some hard stuff. And I don't know, suffering never killed me yet.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it can't, but
No.
um, but that's kind of true in this chapter too. Like they just have to hunker down,
Yeah.
and maybe that's something Boromir knows. You know what I mean?
Mm.
We talked about sort of that. He's the F-150 of the party. He's bringing this kind of masculine thing. He's like, all we got to do is wade through the snow, and we're gonna make it. You know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he just goes for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I sort of love that approach, at least at this point in my life. That there's something I think to that, just sort of barreling through something because you have to get to the other side of it. So,
Yeah,
um,
man. Yeah.
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 So some lessons for sure in this book, Mr.
Some
Tolkien.
life lessons from the professor.
Indeed.
And I think like 10 years ago when I was a little bit younger, I think if I'd heard us having this conversation, I would kind of just be like, hey, screw you guys. Like, God doesn't want us to suffer. Like, why are you saying that God, like, it's like in God's plan to suffer, that all you have to do is just suffer. Like screw that. That isn't how it
Yeah,
should be.
I'm
And
the
it's
same
like,
way. Yeah.
but also now that we have like a few more years under our belts and we've, you know, had suffering ourselves, we have known people who have suffered like unimaginable
Yeah.
suffering. Um, and we know lots of people who didn't get out the other side of that suffering.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Like the kind of the hallmark card of like, you know, God will see you through this, or like, you'll get to the other side. Just, God won't give you more than you can handle. It's like, well, sometimes God gives you more than you can handle.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean, I think I was a little quick to kind of toss out the wisdom of all that you can do is to make a decision to do the best that you can with what you've been dealt.
Yeah, and that's what this. I mean, that's a big part of what this book is about.
Yeah.
And I think it's true in life, but I don't think you can know that when you. Well, I think it's rare to know that when you're 25 or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not that you can't have profound suffering as a 25-year-old, and I certainly had my own fair share, but without perspective, I don't know. There is something to it.
There's light and there's beauty even in the midst of that suffering.
I mean, we don't need to get into a deep theological conversation. I don't think God is like putting suffering into people's lives. Like I don't want to believe in a God like that. I don't think it's worthwhile.
Mm-mm.
But I do think there's lessons to be learned there, and I think that I think there really is something about doing the, as you just said, doing the best with the hand you're dealt is, gosh, it's a big part of life.
I mean, speaking of, I mean, like, you ready to kind of just dive into?
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, so we start out in Elrond's house with the hobbits sort of reflecting with Bilbo about what happened at the council. Merry and Pippin are like just aghast at Sam's cheek for having snuck into the council, and they're like, and instead of just being like thrown into prison, you get rewarded by being sent on the journey with Frodo.
Yeah,
And as it stands, it seems like the only plan is for Frodo and Sam to go to Mordor at this point.
just the two of them.
Just the two of them. Like I had completely forgotten about that.
Mm-hmm.
But as it stands, like the plan is for these 2-3 foot little dudes to just walk into Mordor.
Yeah, which maybe makes the end of the book or the beginning of the next book make a little more sense. Like,
Yeah.
Frodo understands he's been sent with these companions, and Elrond it sort of frames it in this kind of auspicious way, but for him to make that choice to be like, Sam and I can do this,
Yeah.
maybe comes from the fact that, like, well, Council of Elrond thought we could do it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and maybe the safest way to go is actually for the two of us to make that choice.
Just sort of fall back on that original plan.
Right,
The
exactly.
simplicity of that original plan.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting, Merry and Pippin are essentially saying like, hey, like we're going to like, try to keep us out of the council, try to say that we have to stay back. Like we are in this thing, whether you send us or not. And then there's the great line, we hobbits ought to stick together, and we will. I shall go unless they chain me up. There must be someone with intelligence in the party. Then you certainly will not be chosen, Peregrine Took, said Gandalf.
Gandalf is like always cutting in on other people's conversations in this chapter.
I love it.
With a little bit of like sarcasm or whatever.
He's the
Which I
comic relief.
love.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he I love that how human he is in this chapter.
Yeah.
I love that this is sort of a continuation of the conspiracy unmasked chapter also, where they're like, yo man, like we're gonna be there. So you can, like, if you want to throw us in a dungeon, that's fine, I guess. But like if you don't, like, we're going along. So you better just like get used to the fact that we're gonna be here for you.
I mean, there's echoes of this when Merry wants to ride with the Riders of Rohan to like the aid of Gondor, and Theoden says, "No, you can't go. Sorry, no room for you.
Yep.
Can't do it." And he's like, "I will run behind this train until my feet wear out,
Yeah.
and I may show up like 3 days late after everything else is already done, but like you better believe that I'm going to show up to this battle. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
you can do to stop me." And that spirit is really beautiful. And it ultimately, I think that's that indomitable will, that commitment to your friends, even in the face of impossible odds. That's what makes the decision to include Merry and Pippin so important. And at the in the end of the day, that is what saves the entire quest. Without Merry and Pippin, for various reasons that we'll get to as we continue in the story, if they were not included in the quest would have failed.
Right. You said indomitable will. I think that's so perfect. And they just bring this huge amount of courage because they don't have any, they're not vested with like magic or
No.
some great, narrative that their like whatever whole family has been a part of, for generations or anything like that.
Right.
They, but they're equally a part of this story as Aragorn or
Yeah. Yeah.
Gandalf.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe even more so, actually. And I think
Yeah.
that I don't think I've said this yet, but on my last read through, I realized that of everyone in the story, Merry and Pippin have the purest and freest agency.
Yeah.
Um, Frodo is the ring bearer, and he's sort of fated to be this ring bearer because of his association with Bilbo.
Yeah.
And Gandalf is serving the Valar.
Yeah.
Aragorn is son of Arathorn, et cetera, et cetera. Boromir is the son of
Son of the steward of Gondor.
the
Yeah.
steward. Legolas is a elf elf prince,
Yeah.
who gets sent by his father. Like they're all living out something about like a, what am I trying to say? Like a
Like a fate or
responsibility.
yeah.
Some of them fate, some of them responsibility. But then Merry and Pippin are just a couple guys who like love their friend, and
Yeah.
they're like, "We are coming," you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that like agency that they have is so fascinating. That's kind of modern in a way. Maybe it's partly because they're like landed gentry or whatever. They have some ability just to get up and walk out of the Shire. But
They don't have any potatoes to grow.
well, right. But even Sam is
Yeah.
Frodo's employee, and they have a different relationship, and so that agency is really cool to see, and
Mm-hmm.
it plays its own role. That their will is, yeah, as you said, really important to the story.
And I think that we kind of take for granted that the story will have a happy ending. And there is profound loss in Lord of the Rings. I think one of the most unfair critiques of Lord of the Rings is that all the good boys come home.
Yeah,
That essentially there's no loss or sacrifice that happens. I think that's just an incorrect reading of the story. But
mm.
we get this kind of like insight into how Tolkien thought of stories and like the role of stories in this chapter. And I just wanted to read a little bit of this. Frodo is talking to Bilbo and he's asking how much longer they'll stay in Rivendell. And Bilbo says, "Oh, I don't know. I can't count days in Rivendell, but
Hmm.
quite long, I should think. We can have many a good talk. What about helping me with my book and making a start on the next? Have you thought of an ending?" It's such an interesting thing for him to be like, "Have you thought of the ending of the story that we're reading right now?"
He's always talking about the end. He mentions that a few times in this book,
Yeah,
and his phrase, "They all settled down and lived together happily ever after."
yeah,
That fairy tale ending,
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Which is essentially the ending of The Hobbit.
yeah, right.
Yeah, and he lived happily ever after to the end of his days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but he says books ought to have good endings, and that I think is a little bit of the professor kind of peeking through the pages of the story at us. I think Tolkien thought uh, that books should have happy endings, that there was like a responsibility of storytellers to give people hope. And I complained about this to you one time. I don't think it was on the pod where I was talking about a book that I read where one of the main characters died unexpectedly. It was a child who died in the story, and it gutted me. And I was so angry at the author at the end of the book for making me fall in love with this character and then taking them away from me so violently. And so I felt cruelly, and I felt like this like indignation where I was just like, how dare you as a storyteller bring me to this point only to tear me down? And then you responded with,
Yeah, I think they have a name for a story like that. And you're like, what? And I was like, a tragedy.
Yeah. And I was like, screw you, man. Like, I know tragedy exists, right? But I think that Tolkien saw it almost like as like a spiritual, I mean, and he certainly had tragic elements in many of the stories. I think there's tragedy in Lord of the Rings, obviously. And some of his writings outside of Lord of the Rings are incredibly dark. I mean,
Yeah.
suicide and incest and, uh, he plumbed the depths of human emotion. But I think there wasn't any room in Tolkien for a kind of like a pessimism about where things were going
Right.
to end up.
Right. I think that's really interesting because, there is so much of the story that is like in this chapter, they walk through ruins.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so much of the story is about sort of a fading greatness or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
there is a certain kind of pessimism in that, but for the end of the story to be vested with some hope or optimism,
Yeah.
is an interesting move. I also think, I mean, to live happily ever after that's a fairy tale trope, right?
Yeah.
It's and trope is not the right word. It's a convention.
Yeah.
And I think he's living in that world, of legendary stories,
Yeah.
and he's vesting that into Lord of the Rings. And so, but you think about fairy tales are pretty dark,
Dark. Yeah. Yeah.
and they've been. I mean, like, they've been translated in our lives. I think we think of most fairy tales through like a Disney lens, probably.
Absolutely.
But when you go back and read, the stuff that the Brothers Grimm had compiled, and then you read even like before that, like things that before they kind of like smoothed out those stories, there's some
Yeah.
weird stuff in there. And even though there's weird stuff, there's still this kind of like something about living happily ever after is like living at all,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
having some kind of, and it's like we talked about suffering before, like the ability to like to have gone through something, some hardship, some or surreal, um, magical, enchanted experience, and then to come out the other side and like come home
Yeah.
with this newly like new perspective. That
Yeah.
is, there's something about that is a happily ever after. But happily
Yeah.
ever after doesn't mean everything is fine and
No.
well. It means that the story has come to a close where more possibilities exist or something. I think. I mean, there's probably folklore scholars out there who would totally school us on this, but um, I think it's really fascinating the way that he finds that tension between you
Yeah.
know a world which inexorably marches toward decay
Yeah.
and total hope for a future which is ordained or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. A future with a hope. And I think it's interesting. Sam's response to Bilbo saying that is, and where will they live? That's what I always wonder.
Yeah, it's so odd. What do you think he means by that?
Well, so I think what he means is like, and they'll live happily ever after. And he's like, yeah, but like at the end of the day, you gotta have the mortgage, and you gotta figure out where the kids get their child care.
He's thinking about his garden or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's thinking about like, it's like, and they lived happily ever after. It's like, oh yeah, but they're gonna start arguing as soon as they get home about taxes. And I think that is Tolkien kind of winking at the way that we read these stories, and we're like, all right, yeah, I mean, they live happily ever after, but like not everything about living is happy, you
Yeah,
know?
that's a really good point.
And I think that that's kind of a modern take on a lot of these stories of being like, oh yeah, but like, what do they do about their 401k? Where will their kids get into college, and what kind of savings accounts are you going to have for your kids' college? Like those little like details of life that don't make it into the story. What about those details?
Yeah.
Like what happens when the princess catches the prince checking out a lady as she walks down the street, and then they argue about it the whole way home?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
that kind of tendency to want to be that, and it's almost like Tolkien being like, yeah, well, those things aren't worth putting in a story.
Yeah, it's not worth mentioning because it's not that interesting.
It's not that interesting. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
but that doesn't take away from the beauty and the happiness of life. Like when we look back at our lives later, and we reminisce about times gone by, we're not thinking about those things. We're thinking about the things that really matter. Yeah, it's interesting. Right in the same section, they're told the story of Beren and Luthien, which is a story that we've mentioned several times. And it's the story of the Silmarils, which are like Tolkien's like oldest part of his story that are the kind of the titular objects of the Silmarillion, which is his, I think the work that he worked on longest and hardest. But they're these magical jewels that hold the light of the trees that existed before the sun and the moon, and they're stolen by Satan, the Dark Lord Morgoth, and then these two characters, kind of in this impossible quest, go to reclaim one of the Silmarils from his crown. And I think they're told that story as a way of like giving them hope. Like here was another impossible quest into lands of evil and unimaginable horror, and these two heroes at the end came out, and they didn't come out without scars. I mean, Beren, the man in the story, ends up having his hand lost. He loses his right hand. And of course, Frodo will eventually lose his finger. But Sam and Frodo make it out in the end, just like Beren and Luthien make it out in the end. And there's a scene in Mordor where Sam says to Frodo, like, do you remember the story of Beren and Luthien? Like, I just realized that we're actually part of that story.
Mm-hmm.
Like that story is still going on, and wouldn't you know, we're a part of that story.
Right. Such a great moment.
And I think that's what this like kind of like introduction section of the Ring Goes South is really all about. It's about like reminding us that these characters are part of this larger narrative. And I think it's a kind of a metatextual comment on why we tell stories and what stories do for us.
Yeah.
But moving right along, Anduril is reforged, and 9 companions are chosen to stand against the 9 riders of the Nazgul, which is not something that I clocked the first 20 times that I read this.
Yeah, I noticed that this time too. Elrond says, "The company of the ring shall be 9, and the 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil. With you and your faithful servant, Gandalf will go. For this shall be a great task, and maybe the end of his labors."
It seems like there's this recognition, and this might be really kind of the first time that it's presented in this way, that this is Gandalf's greatest task. And so like if the task fails, Gandalf will fail. And so he kind of has to go along for this like last push. Like he is the enemy of Sauron, and so he has to be part of this final quest. But yeah, I mean, there's just kind of the recognition that like, hey, he's probably going to die too. Like this is probably going to be the end of his labor.
Gandalf is the man. I mean, I know it's probably like a just hackneyed whatever. I mean, of course, everybody loves Gandalf, but I don't know, but he's this such a fantastic character. He's so humble, but he doesn't play it small either. You know what I mean? Like,
no,
he's humble, but he's like well within his sort of like his power and his. You're right. Like he's like in the pocket of what he's supposed to be doing in the world more and more as the book goes on.
Right.
And that's exciting. That's exciting to watch. So the 9, they're still trying to figure out who these will be. We know hobbits are going.
Yeah, we're gonna have Frodo and Sam definitely. Gandalf is now locked in. He's the 3rd draft pick. And then we need some representatives from all the free peoples. So
right, elves, dwarves, and humans.
We got Legolas from Mirkwood. We got Gimli from Under the Mountain. And then Aragorn he's going to reclaim his throne with his shining magic sword with 7 stars. And we got Boromir, who, Aragorn calls valiant
Yeah.
and true and brave. And Frodo's just like pleased to death that Strider is coming.
Yeah, he's so excited.
Yeah. But that leaves 2. And so this is the debate now. It's like, all right, so like, who are the other 2 going to be? I mean, if you and I were filling out this like draft, we would not choose Merry and Pippin to go. We just wouldn't.
No, you pick the most powerful person you can. You know what I mean? You pick
It'd be Glorfindel, hands down.
Glorfindel, exactly. Like,
or freaking Elrond himself.
Like the Nazgul are like afraid of this guy. Like
Yeah.
he has like a shining raiment and
Yeah.
all of that. And
maybe not the best for his stealth, but I mean, at one point he was just like, yeah, I saw the Nazgul. There was like 5 of them. I just kind of ran after him. They ran away.
They ran away.
So yeah. I mean, we would not pick Merry and Pippin. That would be like me deciding that I wanted to run a marathon and picking like a support crew and being like, here, let me get my like 2 6-year-old kids to be the driver of the van. It's like, no, they're luggage, man. Like they, and within 5 pages of them leaving, these guys almost die.
Their luggage. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, but Gandalf is into it. Gandalf is like,
there's wisdom in it.
Well, Pippin is like, if you pick somebody else, there'll be no place for us, because apparently it's important for the fellowship to be 9.
Which a little arbitrary, but whatever.
And Elrond says the only reason you don't want to go is because you don't understand.
The only reason you want to go, the only reason you want to go is because you don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, you don't understand. You can't imagine what lies ahead. And Gandalf is like, well, neither does Frodo. I mean, Frodo doesn't know what lies ahead.
No,
he's the ring bearer. And he also says, you know what? None of us see clearly. So Gandalf says, even if they did know the danger, they would still want to go, because he knows these guys and he knows hobbits. He says, I think, Elrond, that in this matter it would be well to trust rather to their friendship than to great wisdom.
Yeah.
And part of Gandalf's wisdom is that he knows that it's that quality of friendship that's what the success of the fellowship hinges on, is a spirit of hope, of friendship, of, like you said, that indomitable will that these guys have.
Yeah.
And there's something, even if Glorfindel was sent, he's being sent by Elrond in some sense,
Yeah. He would do it out of duty.
Whereas like for Merry and Pippin to go, it's this like pure act of love for Frodo. That is what is powerful right there.
Well said. Well said. And it goes all the way back to like when they came across the elves in the wood when they were still in the Shire. Oh, and he says like, take what friends as are trusty and willing. That may not be an exact quote.
Yeah, it's close. Yeah.
It's just a recognition that the wisdom that comes from, and wisdom it seems to be even like deeper than Elrond's wisdom, who's like one of the wisest people in the entire world, which is just like, no, the enemy expects us to fight with force.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to find our strength in hope and love and friendship, fellowship.
Yeah. So I have a question.
Yeah.
I think that Elrond, if he isn't convinced, he's sort of willing to like go along with or to, take Gandalf's
advice. Yeah. Uh-huh.
But then he says, in any case, I judge that the younger of these 2, Peregrine Took, should remain. My heart is against his going.
Yeah.
What's that about? Do you think that's a foreshadowing for the mines, or?
I think it's more that, so Pippin is still like a child in terms of like Hobbit.
Oh, yeah.
Lifespan. And so I think it's probably the equivalent of like, okay, no, we're not going to send this like teenager into battle.
He's too young. Yeah.
He's too young. Like he hasn't lived a life yet. Like everyone else here is old.
Right.
You know, Aragorn's in his 80s. Gandalf is an immortal, you know,
Yeah. Angel.
Legolas like refers to everyone else there as children all the time because he's like, you know, centuries old. Gimli is
Yeah.
like 200 at this point or something. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah.
You know, everyone else has lived a life up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Pippin is the only one who really is like he's still a kid, and I think that's probably what he's talking about. Though I do think like Elrond isn't saying that they're incapable people. He's like, no, I actually need them to go back to the Shire because like I have a feeling
Yeah.
that stuff is like going down in the Shire that needs some attending to, and we need people of intelligence to go back and
Yeah.
set that to right. And that ultimately, I mean, that is what Merry, Pippin, and Frodo and Sam do. They go back and they handle business. And if they had been there, you know, maybe things would have gone differently. But if they hadn't come along in the journey, let's just like list some of Merry and Pippin's accomplishments really quickly.
Yeah. Sure.
They provide an opportunity for Boromir to redeem himself, which is one thing that Aragorn says over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
They rouse the Ents. Merry participates in the killing of one of the most powerful evil creatures in the entire book, the Witch King of Angmar. With his sparrow sword, he stabs him in the leg.
No big deal.
Pippin saves Faramir from premature death. They become riders of Rohan and men of Gondor. Pippin, at the end, stabs a troll by himself in the last battle and kills a troll alone.
Yeah. They become. Do they become knights of Gon? Well, riders of one of them's a rider of Rohan, and the other one's like a knight. And then
they come back like clad in mail and
they
raiment.
never take their mail off again. They're just like
they become like the
Knights of
tallest
Shire.
hobbits in the Shire. They come and they mop up the brigands who are made up of like full grown sized men.
Yeah.
Like these guys, like they are very impressive people. As unimpressive as they are in comparison, maybe to Gandalf.
Yeah.
Like they grow literally. I mean, like one thing that is said over and over again is you've grown, and it's not just in stature. I mean, they do grow in stature because they drink the special magic water or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like they grow throughout the course of the story in ways that are it's really inspiring to me. And their unwillingness to leave their friends, like Pippin here is just like, you're gonna have to clap me in chains. Like we all need friends like that, and I think all of us want to be friends like that.
I'm glad that you talked about how young Peregrine is, because I think there's a sweetness there. Like Elrond's concern is not just about, you know, the majesty of the quest or whatever. He's concerned personally for Pippin.
Yeah.
Like, this is a child. Not that he's not capable, but that like we shouldn't send, you know, a child into this like
certain death. I mean, yeah.
into the wilderness, right? As you said, you know, Pippin said, you'll have to lock me in prison or send me home tied in a sack. And Elrond's like, let it be so then. You shall go.
Yeah.
And he sighed.
Yeah.
Now the tale of the 9 is filled. In 7 days the company must depart.
And what day do they depart on, Logan?
Well, I think I saw this on Reddit.
And it's true because I
oh, you confirmed it.
I confirmed it to make sure that we didn't spread falsehoods on the internet.
They leave on Christmas Day,
December 25th.
December 25th. And on this reading, you know, because I got that little tidbit, you know, they don't leave. It's not a celebratory mood.
No. Everybody but Boromir is pretty pretty depressed.
And Bill the pony is pretty excited to get on the road too.
Yeah, Bill's swishing his tail. Yeah.
But you know, it's not like they're singing carols as they walk out of there. But I actually think that's a pretty good way to think about Christmas in some way. Yeah, I mean, you know, Emmanuel, God with us, yada yada. But also like a child is like born to die. And
born into poverty.
Yeah, surrounded by horse shit and you know, stinky animals and nowhere to lay his head.
And a king trying to murder him.
Yeah, and so it's right, exactly. Yeah, and so it's, you know, I do think that the kind of dour way that they start the quest, they're all sort of depressed,
Yeah.
um, is not so bad. And I once joked that being depressed at Christmas was not invented until the Charlie Brown Christmas special came out. Like no one was depressed at Christmas until then.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Right.
but maybe not. I mean, Tolkien has shown us that
Yeah.
maybe depression at Christmas goes back a little further than Charlie Brown. But
It's a blue Christmas at Rivendell, man.
exactly. So yeah, I love that. I love that they leave on Christmas Day.
I think it's hilarious the way that Boromir leaves. I mean, this is the F-150 truck nuts
He's
of
rolling coal out of the Shire or
he's like "Brr,
Rivendell.
brr, 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 brr."
Everybody
And
stands up in Rivendell. They're like,
yeah,
"Oh,
yeah,
hey!"
everyone's like, "Oh, hey." Like, but everybody's like, "What the hell are you doing, Boromir?"
Yeah, he's
Like
such a
like we've been talking about how we need to be secret this whole time, and then you literally announce your departure with a horn.
with a horn. Yeah, yeah. I
Oh, it's
love that
bizarre.
I love that he's got this horn that he's just toting around with him. It's like a big part of his personality. He's got it
Yeah.
on his lap. He's got it on his lap at the council. He's
He's
like,
fingering it. Yeah.
I'm ready to blow this thing at any time. So just be aware.
Give me an excuse
Yeah,
to
right.
blow this horn.
Right. Uh it's so great. Um I love that we get like a so the sword is reforged.
Yeah.
And Aragorn gave it a new name and called it Anduro, Flame of the West.
Yeah.
And it's shining. It's this shining sword. It sort of like captures the sunlight or whatever.
Yeah.
But then we get a little description of everybody's weapons.
Yeah. It's like almost like an action movie. But I mean, if you think about it, I mean, like if we were to just look at a set of weapons in a row, we could probably for the last 20 years, you and I both could be like, that's Gimli's, that's Legolas's, that's
Yeah,
Boromir's,
totally.
that's like that's Gandalf's staff, and
Right.
that's Sting, and it's like, yeah, man, they are suiting up. Has a more iconic like collection of weapons ever been assembled?
I love it. I think it's I think it's fantastic that each weapon kind of fits its owner in a way.
Yeah,
Of
big
course,
time.
Sting comes from Bilbo to Frodo. Um, and that's really just a dagger, right? Which I think is
Yeah,
true of the so-called swords that Merry and Pippin get as well.
the Barrow swords.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, and
and I
and
guess Sam
then
too, huh?
and Sam too, right? And then although I don't know if Sam ever uses his sword.
It doesn't really mention it that often, does it? I mean,
We'll
well,
have to
actually,
we'll have to keep a lookout for that. Does Sam
in
use his sword very
Moria,
often?
he kills his first orc and
Yeah,
gets a
so
scratch on top of his head, and
right,
Aragorn says something along the lines of like, most people like received worse for the killing of their first orc, so
right.
like, good job. So he definitely uses his barrow sword there too.
And Frodo, as well as getting Sting, gets his mail shirt
Yeah,
from Bilbo, and but even in this, he's sort of being knighted by Bilbo or something. Maybe he
yeah, it's
gets
like the passing of the guard.
a
Yeah,
sword and mail. But even in this, there's a little hobbitry where he's like, "Well, I can't wear this.
no,
It looks ridiculous."
yeah,
And Bilbo's like, "Well, just wear it under your clothes."
yeah,
And and you couldn't even tell that he had it on. Although when he slaps his back, he says, "Oh, you're too hard to slap." It's so
I
funny.
love that. I love
Hurts
that
his
bit.
hand. He's like, you're too hard to
Ah,
slap. It's like
ah.
Frodo. But I also love that, like Frodo, he gets he like levels up or something. I mean, they've all leveled up, but like
Yeah,
Frodo,
big time.
gets this like special magic sword, magic armor, and he's, I love, have always loved in stories and particularly in movies, like the
Suit up.
montage of the montage of everybody like suiting up, whether it's for, prom or for some, action movie or whatever. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, like
Yeah, exactly.
it's the
great.
montage, man.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it started though. Here they go, December 25th. And here's the bit that we started the pod with today. The ring bearer is setting out on the quest of Mount Doom. On him alone is any charge laid, neither to cast away the ring nor to deliver it to any servant of the enemy, nor indeed to let any handle it save members of the company and the council, only then in gravest need. The others go with him as free companions to help him on his way. You may tarry or come back or turn aside into other paths as chance allows. The further you go, the less easy it will be to withdraw, yet no oath or bond is laid on you to go further than you will. For you do not yet know the strength of your hearts, and you cannot foresee what each of you may meet on the road. You and I have been talking back and forth about this, just how unexpected this is, and I feel like Gimli's response of saying like, faithless is he that says farewell when the road darkens. I think that's what all of us would like to think our response to danger in the face of like an oath that we took would be.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if we think about it, I was just thinking about this before we started recording. Everyone in the quest at some point falls away from the quest. Every last one of them, except for maybe Sam, even Frodo.
Yeah, Frodo. Mm-hmm.
I mean, Gandalf dies first.
Sam has this moment where he really considers.
Oh, in the Mirror of Galadriel scene, he has to choose, whether to stay or to go. Yep. And I think it was a real choice. But either by a break in trust, or death, or just circumstances outside of their control, all of them do fall away from the path. Gandalf dies, Boromir dies, Merry and Pippin get abducted.
Mm-hmm.
Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli choose to chase after them and leave Frodo on his own. Frodo gets stung by Shelob, and Sam has to continue on for a while. And then ultimately, when the time comes to make the choice, Frodo also breaks.
You can't do it. Yeah.
Can't do it. So like it really is like, it's almost like Elrond is like none of, like, just like the rest of the hobbits, like none of you really know what you're getting yourselves into. And it's like, you are going up against incredible challenges here, and some of you aren't going to make it through. And I think that's a really somber way to start.
Yeah. Except for Boromir blowing his stupid horn. It is very downbeat,
Yeah, it's pretty.
Leaving, they're not, and it's like in contrast to the hobbits and Aragorn leaving Bree.
Yeah,
which is kind of
it's like a comical parade.
Well, yeah, triumph is the wrong word, but it's this like royal parade or something like that. Like people can't, and I think that's kind of because people can't help but see through Aragorn's scruffy, disguise.
Yeah.
But like this is not that, and no one needs to see through Aragorn's scruffy surprise. No one needs to see through Aragorn's
exterior
scruffy disguise. They see the true import of what's happening here, and the risk of the ring falling back into the hands of like the worst person in the world. And so really struck by that on this reading, how downbeat it is.
And this is where Bill gets his name as well. We find out that Sam is named Bill, and we mentioned before just how funny it is that Sam names Bill because the owner of Bill was also named Bill Fernie.
Yeah.
That would be like me naming my dog Zach. Like, it's just such a funny. It's like, hi, I'm Zach, and this is my dog. What's your dog's name? Zach.
His name's also Zach.
Like, Sam got to pick any name he wanted.
He doesn't have a very good imagination. Sam doesn't.
I just think that's very so freaking funny. I've never heard anyone else point this out. Maybe we're like breaking news in Tolkien world
I never have
that
either. I think it's
that
hilarious.
Bill being named Bill is the funniest thing to me. It is so Sam. Uh, yeah. Hi, I'm Logan. This is my dog. What's his name? Logan.
Oh, it's so weird. I mean, Sam's a special boy. He's a
He's a sweet
he's a,
boy.
he's just a
Yes.
sweet he's just a sweet simple boy, you know?
Well, let's move along because there's a lot more that happens in this chapter. Oh my gosh. Let's just jump straight ahead to the birds
Yeah.
because the birds are terrifying. Regiments of black crows are flying over all the land between the mountains of the Gray Flood, and they have passed over Holland. These are not native here. I do not know what they are about. Possibly there's some trouble away south. It's chilling. I mean, they're all just kind of sitting there, and there's this moment and it's almost cliche of like, it's quiet. It's too
Too
quiet.
quiet.
Yeah. And then we get these flocks of birds that are flying against the wind and searching out. And they don't know for sure that they're spies, but yeah, they're spies.
Can we go I'm sorry to do this, but can we go back real quick to Legolas?
Please do.
Legolas, they're walking in, through these ruins. There was a wholesome air about Holland.
Yeah.
Much evil must befall a country before it wholly forgets the elves, if once they dwelt here, says Gandalf.
Yeah.
And Legolas says, this is true, but the elves of this land were a race strange to us of the sylvan folk, and the trees and grass do not now remember them. Then he says, only I hear the stones lament them. Deep they delved us, fair they wrought us, high they builded us, but they are gone. They are gone, they sought the havens long ago.
Yeah.
Okay, Legolas can't hear the stones speaking, can he? This is a figure of speech, is it not?
I think so. I mean, I do think
It's
he has
poetical.
it's poetic. I think he has a connection to the land that the others don't, just because of his age. I mean, we get a lot of this like in Fangorn. He has a way of being like, oh, like, these trees are old, and I feel young standing next to him in a way that I haven't in a long time. And he has this deep connection
Yeah.
to the land. The fact that it's in italics makes me wonder if it's part of a elven song
Oh, yeah, it's some kind
that
of
he's
song or
quoting.
something.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, it's like this land is so ancient,
Oh,
and the elves have been gone for so long that there aren't trees and grass that remember them. It's just the
yeah.
stones.
The trees in the grass are too young. The trees in the grass that are in this area are too young to remember
Yeah,
the elves that used to live here, but the stones are old enough to remember them.
yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, that makes sense to me, and that's really helpful. That idea, like that the Fangorn forest is so old that it makes Legolas feel young. These trees don't make Legolas feel young. They're just they're new trees
They're
or whatever.
sprouts. Yeah, yeah.
But of course the stones are not. Okay, well, thank you for letting
That's
me
just my
take that
reading of it. I mean,
take
and
that aside. I like that reading a lot. Yeah, I think that's cool.
this area that we're in is like, you know, these are the elves that forged the rings.
Right.
Were from this area, and so this was like a great civilization, with great technology and deep knowledge and power. And so there's like this sense of loss that Legolas has of like, they were strange to the Sylvan elves, but they were greater. I mean, the Noldor mean like the knowledgeable,
Mm-hmm.
um, and their their kind isn't around anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like the closest that we get is people like Galadriel or Glorfindel, or like, but everyone else is gone, gone over to Valinor.
So with these crows spying on them, they have to decide
There's some urgency.
how they're going to go and win. And we get the beginnings of a debate between Gandalf and Aragorn about which way to go.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note here that Aragorn wants to avoid Moria.
Yeah.
Gandalf is like, that might be the way to go.
Yeah. But Aragorn wins the debate essentially. I mean, he's like, we need to avoid that unless we absolutely have no other choice.
And it hits on that a few times that Aragorn is very much in the mind of avoiding, that darker, literally darker path.
Yeah, I mean Moria literally means like black pit.
Right. And
Um,
Gandalf calls the other way the dark and secret way we have spoken of.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love the foreshadowing there. But let's not speak of it again, not yet. But I think Gandalf knows there's some piece of
yeah.
Gandalf that maybe knows that that's the way they're going to have to go. And
He may even know that he's not gonna make it out. Aragorn and Gandalf's debate about where to go, and where to go next. You have like the choice of like, do we go over the mountain or under the mountain? You don't have time to go around the mountain because that would take too long. So they ultimately decide to go over the mountain, which is kind of a fateful decision. Which, like, I mean, I don't know about you, but if I looked at a mountain, I don't think my first thought would be, "Great, let's climb this mountain."
no.
Like, but it's dangerous, and like even if they weren't met with a freak snowstorm that may or may not be contrived by one of the bad guys,
Mm-hmm.
um, that would be a really dangerous thing to do. So
Yeah,
it's
it sort of seems like this is the most dangerous mountain out there too. Gimli has some like lore about it being, like a
yeah, it's
that
just a
it just
it's just a mean
tries to defeat dwarves and elves.
it's just a mean old mountain. But it kind of
Yeah.
reminds me a little bit of the in the Hobbit when the dwarves and Gandalf and Bilbo uh go up the mountains and they're met with these stone giants.
Yeah.
And the stone giants aren't in Lord of the Rings, but there are some rocks that seem to be aimed at them. I wonder if that's not maybe the stone giants making their way into the text. I think I'm stealing that insight from Corey Olsen. So kudos goes to Corey Olsen and the Mythgard Academy for that insight that the aiming of the rocks may be an allusion to the stone giants, and the kind of the more grounded story of Lord of the Rings doesn't mention them in the same way the Hobbit would, but the idea that the mountain has a will of its own. I don't know. What do you think? Is this a contrivance of the enemy? Has his hand grown so long that he can control the weather over such vast distance? Do you think it's Sauron? Do you think it's Sauruman? Do you think it's the mountain itself? What do you think?
I don't know what it is. They're certainly under attack. I mean, I think that we're supposed to take that they're either under attack by Sauron or Sauron. I don't really understand how weather magic works. Like, does Sauron uh, can they command? I guess with a word of command, they could. They're powerful enough that they could say that there should be a storm there.
Yeah,
Aragorn does say, and they hear something in the wind. They hear laughter and stuff in the
yeah,
wind, and then
yeah.
Aragorn says, there are things older than Sauron in these mountains.
They have little love for those who go on two legs and yet are not in league with Sauron.
Right. And so I think I think it's a whole mix, and the point is that it's hard, and the point is that they're forced to go another way.
Yeah,
And as I was thinking about it, because they don't really get, I mean, they travel a long distance in this chapter, but they there's not like a plot beat necessarily.
no,
They
no,
they go halfway up the mountain and come back down.
yeah,
Um, and I was like, well, why not just go to Moria? Like just let's like get us to the next scary thing that happens.
yeah,
Um, but I wonder if in Tolkien's mind it wasn't like No, like Moria is like a serious place, you know.
Yeah, you don't
It's
want to
not
go there.
somewhere it's not somewhere you go if you don't want to. And I think that's why we have this debate between Gandalf and Aragorn.
You have to be a special kind of person to even be able to get to Moria.
Right. And we as the right, exactly. And then we as the reader, I think, have to be convinced that
There was no other option.
there was no other option. Exactly. That going into Moria um is the only thing they can do because this, pass over the mountains is equally challenging
Yeah,
or more challenging in some way.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot going on and a lot of questions, which is, I think, part of the pleasure of reading Lord of the Rings is not knowing exactly what's happening.
It's definitely it's not cut and dry. And in the movies, Saruman is the Gandalf even goes, "It's Saruman."
And do
Like,
we get Saruman standing on top of Orthanc and muttering to the wind?
in my mind now, after this reading, I think it's just the mountain itself. This kind of this
Yeah,
personified soul of this mountain who does not like people thinking of it as a shortcut. I wouldn't like someone coming and climbing over me either.
mm,
But I mean, at one point, I mean, they at this very, very first stage, apart from the birds, which they had to hide from, this is really the first challenge they've met. There's some consideration of them going back to Rivendell.
yeah.
And Merry and Pippin are like, "Oh, hey, sounds
Sounds
great."
nice. Yeah, right.
Yeah. But
Um,
yeah, it could just be the fact that, I mean, I've had my butt kicked by a mountain that wasn't magical.
right.
Um, like, mountains are unforgiving. And, even if you're a wizard or a ranger or a powerful man, whatever. But I do think Boromir's wisdom comes off. I mean, like you were talking about Boromir being the
Yeah.
hero. I mean,
Boromir's like, we need to bring wood. Yeah, we need to bring some wood with us. And it's kind of like, why? We probably shouldn't be like lighting a lot of fires. And he's like, look, we're gonna want this wood.
yeah, is either let yourself be known or freeze to death.
Right.
And the choice between fire and death, choose fire.
Yeah. So they need the wood. They need Gandalf to light it with his magic
Word of
magic
command.
fire commands. But then also Boromir, I mean, he shows up. He shows up big in this chapter where he brings that wood. He also sort of like keeps Frodo alive. Maybe like Frodo is like falling into a stupor. He's not just falling asleep, I don't think. And he kind of
No,
rouses Frodo and the hobbits and says,
this
"Look,
will be
these
the
hobbits
death
are."
of the halflings.
Yeah, he's like, these halflings are gonna die if we don't do something.
So Gandalf
And
pulls out his elf liquor.
yeah, yeah. So that helps keep them warm.
It's like magic potions, man. Magic potions are in Lord of the Rings. I'd never really clocked on the fact that
Yeah,
there's magic potions in Lord of the Rings in several places.
yeah. You get a little HP boost.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and I love that Boromir's like, well, look, I'm a big, strong man. So as we go back down the mountain here, when they choose to go back, everyone's behind Boromir. Like
Yeah,
Boromir's just swimming through the
he's a
snow.
truck.
You know,
Here, I found the line that I mentioned earlier. He says, "Well, when heads are at a loss, bodies must serve, as we say in my country."
that's right. He's just gonna throw himself at it.
At one point, somebody says, maybe I think it's Legolas says, like, "Hey, Gandalf could just do that flamethrower thing you just did a minute ago." And Gandalf is like, "Hey, I can't burn snow, idiot." And Legolas is like, "Oh, I don't care.
I'm gonna walk on top of the snow anyway. So,
He's
and
like,
it says
I'm
that
unbothered."
you're right. It says that Legolas is the only person in the company who has like a whatever light heart.
Yeah,
Um, so there's something about being an elf that gives you
he's just like,
some.
"This isn't my first rodeo, folks."
Yeah, right. I've
Like,
been in worse spots than this.
and he's like climbing the
Um,
mountain in socks, essentially. Like he's just like, yeah, he doesn't even have boots on. He just has like
right.
socks. Uh, which I guess the hobbits are still barefooted.
Yeah, hobbits don't fuck with shoes.
I mean, well, so I mean, they're barefooted in the movies. Does it say explicitly that the hobbits are not wearing shoes right now? Because let's
No.
think about how ridiculous that is.
It says that they're bundled before they leave Rivendell. It says that they get furs and they're bundled up.
Is the
So
idea that hobbits are always shoeless like a little bit of a misnomer
no,
potentially?
No, I choose to believe that they never wear shoes. That their feet are like
Logan, grow up. Think
no,
about how
their feet are covered in hair, and
dude,
they have these, and it's like leather. Like
have
their
you
feet
ever
are
walked
boots.
have you ever walked on the snow without shoes on for even the briefest period of time?
Yeah, but I'm not a hobbit. I'm a
I
man.
know. Well, so I challenge. There's a section in like Tolkien's letters where he's writing to somebody, and he says, "Oh yeah, Bilbo was wearing boots from Rivendell on
No,
in The
he does.
Hobbit."
He says that.
Yes,
That's very
it's just he
disappointing
doesn't
to
he
me.
doesn't mention it. And so he
Well, then
says
he
to
should have
someone
put it in
essentially
the.
like they got to be wearing shoes, man.
I don't care what it
Corey
says in the
Olson,
letter.
Corey Olson. I assume that you are listening at this point.
Of course, obvious. The great Corey Olson.
Corey Olson doesn't have time. He's doing another 600-hour podcast. Uh, I think the hobbits have to be wearing shoes. I'm probably gonna cut this out because I don't want to get yelled at on the internet.
I don't
But
care what it says in the letters. I don't believe. I mean, that's not part of the canon, so I don't care. I truly don't. I I I choose to believe that the hobbits don't wear shoes. I think they're like magical little their feet. If
they
the
are
hobbits have any
freezing.
magic,
They are
it's
freezing to death,
it's in their feet.
and it's like, oh, I wonder why the hobbits are freezing to death. Could it be that we let them walk up this mountain without any shoes on? They are simple folk. Sam named his pony Bill. Okay, he doesn't know any better. All right, put some
That's
shoes
true.
on the hobbits. If the hobbits aren't wearing shoes, then Gandalf should be ashamed of himself because, of course, they're about to freeze to death. They're not wearing any shoes on the top of a mountain in a snowstorm.
It's I think everywhere the hobbits tread, where there's snow, the snow just melts into their feet. I just think
I'm cutting this out. I'm cutting all this out. Boromir, he is heedless of the snow, and he just burrows away through. And they get down. I mean, it's kind of an embarrassing first adventure.
Yeah, it's a real failure for sure.
And it makes it so that they have to make a decision now what to do. Basically as soon as they get down, they clock that the birds are still watching them. So they're like, okay, not only are the birds watching us and they saw that we weren't able to get over the mountain now, so we're basically sitting ducks.
Yeah.
So there's really not another choice. Either we have to make another go at the mountain or we have to go under it. And there's really no other choice. And Gandalf ends the chapter by saying, whether they are good or evil or have nothing to do with us at all, we must go down at once. Not even on the knees of Caradhras will we wait for another nightfall. So they have to make it a choice. And then the last words of the chapter, in total Tolkien fashion, loquacious to a fault, but he loves to end chapters on just these short, pithy sentences. Caradhras had defeated them.
Well, Caradhras may have defeated the company, but it hasn't defeated us.
Amen.
We thank you for reading along with us. We hope you'll join us next week for Book 2, Chapter 4, A Fellowship of the Ring, A Journey in the Dark, one of my favorite chapters. If you want to help us out, please share the podcast with a Lord of the Rings fan in your life. Of course, you can follow us in all the places, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and visit waywardwizards.com for more info.
And if you want to reach out to us over email, you can always reach out to us at Zach@waywardwizards.com, Logan@waywardwizards.com, or info@waywardwizards.com.
Indeed.
But until next time, remember, books ought to have good endings. We'll see you next week.